Do you wish Sony would finally fix their camera platform by finally putting a fully articulating screen on their cameras? Me too! But until they do, we just have to take matters into our own hands. The Andycine A6. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. My buddy Ken Haran over on his channel made a video the other day about his new monitor, a 7-inch Field World behemoth that you should definitely go watch. Well, watch this one first and then go watch his. I'll leave a link to his in the description below. And since I've been promising for months to review the one that I use, I figured now is the perfect time to show the little sibling of the Field World monitor, the Andycine A6. It's different name brands, but same company, you know, go figure. There aren't a lot of specs to go over, but it does have a few that are pretty awesome. The Andycine A6 has a 5-inch display, perfect for seeing yourself and not being narcissistic in the slightest. Well, maybe slightly, but it's okay if it's for YouTube. And this 5-inch screen is in 1080p. One of the things you generally run into more budget monitors is they have a lower resolution. This HD image will ensure that you can get the best image you want out of your camera. It will still work with a 4K image, so you won't run into problems that you'll also find in budget monitors where they just won't work if you try to input 4K. This will take a 4K signal and it'll show 1080p, making it very good for focus peaking and making sure your exposure is correct. It has both a DC in and out, meaning you can plug it in from a wall, and one of the big benefits for the continuously overheating tiny battery Sony cameras is you can power a camera with a dummy battery and use one of these giant batteries to do it, meaning you can get more juice and the heat from the battery isn't built up inside the camera itself. It's kind of game changing when you think about the A63, A6500s with their overheating problems, and a lot of that comes from the battery. As the batteries discharge, they get hot, and as they heat up, it negatively affects the camera. So if you're able to take that out of there, not only do you get longer battery life, but you also get less heat. It's a win, 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 win. It does have the ability to flip the image depending on how you want to have the screen oriented, but one of the negatives is you do have to press a button to flip. It doesn't do like a small HD monitor that automatically does it. You gotta assign one of these custom buttons to do it, you know, yourself. You know, a really big benefit for those that spend their time behind the camera is it also has a headphone jack. So again, if you're using one of the APS-C Sony cameras and you want to monitor your camera's audio, you can't do that straight from the camera, but you can do it from this monitor. On the A7 III, it does have a headphone jack, but the other ones do not. So another huge benefit for those in front of or behind the camera. Another physical benefit of the Andycine A6 is it comes with this little mount that lets you easily swap it from either looking in front of or behind the camera. So this is a small rig little adapter I've got on here right now, but it comes with this little angled mounting bracket, I guess you would call it, that is very similar to, again, the small HD monitors, but you get this for such a cheaper price, and it really works well. It lets you angle it however you want. The one issue I do have with it, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit, is it's not the most sturdy bracket, but we'll talk more in a second. Not only are the physical aspects of the Andycine awesome, but it also has some really nice tools to ensure you get proper framing and exposure on your shot. Before we get into all of the settings, something I want to mention is that each of these function buttons can be set to quickly switch between these modes. The first really useful tool is also one of the easiest to use, and it's, you know, overexposure zebras. On here they just call it straight overexposure, but it does the same thing. Basically, when you have this on, as if you have zebras over your image, that means your image is overexposed. So turn down the zebras, like we mentioned on another video about zebras hunting in the Serengeti. You want to chase them away, and you want your image to be nice and not overexposed. And chasing away those zebras like a tiger means that your images are going to be properly exposed. Dad jokes. Another awesome function is you can turn on the rule of thirds grid that will ensure that you are also properly aligned in your shot. Rule of thirds is a quick and easy way to figure out where to be in the frame. Generally, right about here is one of the more interesting places to have your subject lined up. It has some neat other functions, but the main one that I think that is missing on most cameras, even my nice like GH5, is Falsecolor. Most high-end cameras these days will have zebras, but Falsecolor is something that I really rely on, but it's not built into any of these cameras. And if you really want to properly expose your video, Falsecolor is great for that. It perfectly shows everything and where its exposure is at. If you'd like to see a video on how to use Falsecolor, leave a comment below and I'll see if I can work one up. It's not that hard to use, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out, right? So you can easily hook this up to your camera. Generally, I use it on my A7 III. Assign a few buttons to your favorite settings and get going really quickly. Again, something that I really like about gear is gear that just works and is not fiddly to use, and this is not fiddly to use. But it's not all, you know, hooplas and happiness. I didn't just want to say sunshine and rainbows. But let's talk about some of the things that I don't like about the Andycine. It is budget. There's gonna be some issues in budget anything. I don't really like the swivel arm that much. We mentioned it earlier. I mean, it's great for what it does, but it comes loose really easily. So if you're gonna move it back and forth, it will absolutely loosen itself. I prefer something like we already mentioned, the Small Rig little monitor mount. Small Rig sent this to me to review, by the way. It keeps it attached and very secure, and you can still do stuff like that, but I prefer this over the mount. But the mount, it's okay, but it's not the best. And honestly, that's really it. I would prefer if it had a touchscreen, but for the low price, it has all the functionality I or you could hope for. And that leaves me what I really, really like. Namely, I like all of the functionality. This relatively cheap monitor adds things that my $1,000 plus cameras can't do. $2,000 camera, $2,000 camera, they can't do the same things that this thing can do. This fixes my Sony camera so that I can see when I'm in front of it, because I spend the majority of my time in front of the camera. Not only does it let me see myself, but it lets me get the exact exposure I want so easily by having that powerful false color functionality. It's so good. It's so good. I also like that you can power a camera, and that camera might have an overheating and small battery problem with a huge external battery solving both issues. This, I would almost say, is required if you're gonna use an A63, A6500, seriously. I also like how high quality the display itself is. 1080p makes it so easy to make sure that your image is exactly what you want it to look like. And that's the purpose of having a camera anyway, right? I highly recommend the Andycine A6 if you are looking for a budget monitor, or heck, even if you aren't looking for a budget one, but just need something that works and is really easy to use, and also as a benefit, won't break the bank. Thanks for watching.